Welcome back. All right, so I want to talk about the Washington Capitals today. The Caps, with their win last night, they jump above the playoff line. And we're going to see movement in the East around that playoff line. Philadelphia's spot in third doesn't look safe. And so, yeah, we could see a change as to who's in or out of the playoffs depending on the night of the week, which is always great. I much prefer when the races are close than when they're decided with months remaining. So the Washington Capitals, what's interesting is their record from October, from the start of the season to December 31st, was 17-11-6. Since January 1st, they're actually 16-14-3. So the record hasn't been great since the 1st of January, but in March thus far, they're 6-3. So it's been an up and down season. The one thing I've noticed with the Caps is when they look bad, they look really bad. When they look good because they're controlling the game, they're controlling the pace, and really just frustrating the other team. Really stifling, blocking the middle of the ice. Not the most exciting hockey to watch, but if they win, you don't care, right? At least if you're a Caps fan. If you're a fan of the other team they're playing against, you might get mildly frustrated. So their scoring rate is definitely higher. So while their record was 17-11-6, they were scoring 2.29 goals per game, allowing 2.79 goals against per game. Since January the 1st, they've been scoring 3.03 goals per game and allowing 3.3. And this month, the numbers have gotten even better. 3.11 goals scored per game and allowing 2.44 goals against. So it has gradually gone in Washington's favor as the months have gone along this year, 2024. They honestly, from October through December, they were fine. Their power play has gotten better, 11.5% until December 31st. It's been 28.1% since then. It's 28.1% in March. That's an excellent number right there. 28.1%, you're going to hurt a lot of teams with that kind of power play. Their penalty kill has suffered, which makes sense. When the power play gets that much better, it's probably going to hurt your penalty kill. Penalty kill was 82.1%. Before the new year, since the new year, 76.5%. This month, 75.9%. So it is getting to a troublingly low number, but as long as the power play is really playing quite well, it's probably all right. So I wanted to highlight three forwards with this team, starting with Dylan Strome, who's still their leading scorer. And if I had told you before the season started Strome was going to be their leading scorer, your answer probably would have been A, is Ovechkin hurt, and B, so are they in the lottery? And honestly, at times they look like a lottery team. This is why people are bewildered. So I wanted to look at some of the numbers on this, and here we are. Strome in October had 6 goals in 8 games, no assists. November, 2 goals, 2 assists in 12 games. December, 5 goals, 6 assists, 11 points in 14 games. January, 6 goals, 4 assists, 10 points in 13 games. Last month, 2 goals, 10 assists for 12 points in 11 games. This month, 2 goals, 8 assists, 10 points in 9 games. Dylan Strome, outside of November, has been remarkably consistent for Washington as a point producer. And has started to, maybe he'll never get to the level that he was expected to when he was drafted, something I say commonly on this channel, and it's one of those things that does happen. But Strome has become a very successful producer of points for the Washington Capitals. Early in the season it was goals, lately it's been points in general. Over his last 20 games, 22 points, 4 of those being goals. Ovechkin, his season's really turned around too. So October he had 2 goals, 6 assists, he did have 8 points in 8 games. November, 3 goals, 3 assists for 6 points in 12 games. December, 2 goals, 5 assists, 7 points in 14 games. So that's 21 points in 34 games when we're turning the calendar to 2024. And so, yeah, all the conversations about whether or not Ovechkin's going to reach the goal mark and all that, trying to chase down Gretzky, it made sense that we would be doubting it. And January, the goal scoring didn't pick up, but the points did. 11 games, 2 goals, 8 assists, 10 points. And in February, the goals showed up. 11 games, 7 goals, 5 assists, 12 points. This month so far, 9 games, 5 goals, 4 assists, 9 points. Meaning, over his last 20 games, he's had 12 goals. So if he can continue to produce at that rate, it really dramatically drops how many games he's going to need, how many goals he's going to need, potentially. And the games and goals needed to chase down Gretzky's record, which I think he's still going to do. Tom Wilson, and I wasn't sure about that in December, but with the way he's been playing lately, I'm like, yeah, no, he should be able to catch Gretzky if he can keep that up. Wilson's had a disappointing season offensively, but he's picked it up lately too. October, he had 2 goals, 3 assists for 5 points in 8 games. November, it was 5 goals, 2 assists, 7 points in 12 games. December, a bit of a lean month there. 3 goals, 3 assists, 6 points in 14 games. In January, 12 games, 2 goals with 1 assist for 3 points. February, 11 games, 1 goal, 2 assists with 3 points. This month, much better. 8 games, 4 goals, 3 assists, 7 points. And they need Wilson to produce the way that we know Wilson can if they're going to stay above the playoff line, if they're going to prove everybody wrong this year. So when we look at this team, one thing that really stands out is the age gap between half the team and the other half. So 32 and over, you've got Ovechkin, Karlsson, Pacioretty, Dowd, Jensen, Van Riemsdyk, and Kemper. This is an old team, or is it? 25 or younger, you've got Protas, McMichael, Sandin, Malenstein, Lapierre, Ferravari, Miroshnichenko, and Alexiev. Amongst those that are on the current roster, there are others who've come up and played for them. There are others that are no longer with the team who've been younger. This is a team that has young players. They've extended Protas. They've extended Sandin. I think Ferravari is going to be a very well-paid defenseman throughout his career. And Miroshnichenko is showing a lot of potential too. I don't know how many of these players are going to be prime main go-to guys. McMichael has the potential. Miroshnichenko, I think, has that potential. Sandin has that on the blue line as well. But there is the question of when Ovechkin and Karlsson especially have aged out and retired, who is going to be the leader for this team? Are they going to be able to avoid that dreaded rebuild? I don't know if they're going to need that rebuild. And a year ago, I was like, yeah, they need a rebuild. But I don't know if they're going to need it. It may not be the prettiest hockey, but maybe they'll just have a very workmanlike effort in every game. Try to keep the scoring low. Maybe this is the identity in who they are. Maybe they don't need that rebuild because there are a lot of young players already in the lineup, right? Now, their upcoming schedule is going to be a challenge. They have a 4-game homestand I wanted to look at. First off, tomorrow, they're at home against Toronto. Toronto is playing in Philly tonight. Now, since the second half of a back-to-back, they may be able to pounce on Toronto and maybe garner a win there. Friday, it's difficult, too, because they're at home against Carolina. On Sunday, they're at home against Winnipeg. Tuesday, they're at home against Detroit. So the first 3 games of the homestand are going to be real tests for this Washington team, and whether or not they're really going to stay in this hunt or maybe have their fade that people keep waiting for, right? Now, they lost the first 2 games on the road trip they've just finished, but they won the final 3. So they lost at Winnipeg, they lost at Edmonton. The loss at Edmonton, that 7-2 loss, we're going to talk about that and the fact that when they lose, they tend to lose big. But they can avenge the loss against Winnipeg with the game on Sunday. And then, of course, on the road trip, they won in Seattle, Vancouver, and Calgary. And the way they controlled Vancouver in Vancouver was impressive. And I say that as a Canuck fan. There haven't been many teams that have come into Vancouver this year and just dictated the play, especially since they were down early. They were behind 1-0. It did not deter them. It didn't change how they played their game. And they took the energy out of that building pretty quickly after that. So they have 2 road games left against the Sabres, which is noteworthy because the Sabres are still in the hunt as well. That's right, I haven't forgotten Buffalo. They also have 2 games left against the Wings. 1 at home, right here, and they have 1 in Detroit as well. So if they can win both those games against Detroit, they are improving their odds of making the playoffs and making Detroit fans more miserable than they've been lately. Also, they have 1 left against the Penguins. That's in Washington. And they have a finish to the season in Philadelphia. That game, you got to circle that one because that may very well decide who finishes third in the division. There's that possibility. Washington stays in this running. The Islanders, of course, are right there too. But there's the possibility Washington jumps into third place. And as I mentioned last night, if we get a Capitals-Carolina first round, I have no idea what to expect from that. A, these teams know each other well. B, they both play a very similar style, in that they both try to suppress shot attempts for the other team. They both like that defense first, the counterattack. It might end up being a series where we see a lot of 1-0 and 2-1s if we get Washington and Carolina this year. Now, the odds, they've gotten better for Washington, honestly. I remember them being at 20%. I think a week ago they were 20%. Money Puck currently has them at a 53.4% chance of making the playoffs. Hockey Reference has them at 49.6%. The Athletic has them at 44%. The one thing that stands out is people talk a lot about goal differential. There have been a lot of years where I've talked about standings and who's where, And people say, just look at the goal differential. The team with that top goal differential is going to make it. The team with the negative goal differential won't. There are times where there's exceptions. Washington's trying to be that exception. They have a negative 23 goal differential. They've allowed 23 more goals than they've scored this season. They are 29th in the NHL in goals for per game at 2.66. Believe they're 29th in 5-on-5 goals in the NHL. They're 18th in goals against per game at 3.04. So they don't have a top half defensive number. They're not anywhere near top half when it comes to the goal scoring. And yet here they are. Against all odds and against all expectations, Washington this year looks like they could make the playoffs. Now, in 1-goal games, they have a points percentage of .593. 2-goal games, they have a points percentage of .667. But if the game has a 3-goal differential or more, their winning percent or their points percentage drops to .355. So Washington doesn't want the high-scoring, really flamboyant, fantastic games. They want the low-scoring. Keep it to a minimum, keep it slow, make sure those shot attempts aren't out there. Keep it close. They have an excellent chance of making it. So if you cheer for a team that's against the Caps, and if they get up, say, 3-0 on the Caps, they're going to beat the Caps. If they get up 1-0 and then can't get that second goal, look out, because the Capitals are really good at making it work in their favor. Recently, what's weird is scoring first and trailing first, their numbers not completely out of line with other teams in the league. If they score first, 22-3-4 is their record. If they score second, meaning they're trailing first, they're 11-22-5. Now, what stands out to me with them as well, the fact they've been shut out 6 times. There's been 6 occasions where Washington hasn't scored. And what's interesting to me with them is there are games, there have been fewer games with this lately, but there are games that just doesn't look like they can score. It doesn't look like it's going to happen. And they again, 6 times this season that's happened. It's bewildering. And yet there's been games they've won too where I've been kind of shaking my head and going, I don't know how they did that. Smoke and mirrors, I guess. I remember early in the season they went through California and had some good results in games where they weren't getting shots. They weren't outplaying the other team, but they came out with 2 points. And that's really the important part. Now, goaltending, what's interesting is when they brought in Darcy Kemper, the idea was Kemper be the starter, right? And Charlie Lindgren's going to be the backup. It's actually the opposite that's happened this year. Lindgren's been fantastic. 18-11-5, .915 save percentage, and 4 shutouts. He has been quite good. Kemper, not as much. 13-13-3 with an .890 save percentage and a single shutout to show for his season as well. Kemper needs to elevate his game at least a bit. They do have Shepherd in the minors. I could see this team going with Lindgren and Shepherd next year as a money-saving way to go in net, because I also think Shepherd's decent enough to be a backup in the NHL, but that's me. But it is going to be interesting to see as the rest of the season unfolds. Do the Capitals make the playoffs? How sustainable is this? I can't think of a time when there's been a team that's on the potential precipice of making the playoffs that I've been thinking to myself, I have no idea what to expect from them in the playoffs. Like in a playoff series, do they just get swept in the first round? Do we look back and go, well, the negative 23 goal differential, the fact they can't score goals at a very high rate, the warning signs were there, they wouldn't be able to sustain it in the playoffs? Or do they win in a first round? Do they go out there and shut other teams down? Do they keep that shot suppression going? Because that's a playoff style of hockey right there, and they're playing it well. So they're going to be fascinating to watch from here. I think that the basically 50-50 is where you've got Money Puck and Hockey Reference. That seems about right. I'd give 50-50 odds to the Islanders, the Flyers, the Capitals, the Red Wings. Sure, whole bunch. Pittsburgh, New Jersey, sure. I have no idea how the East is going to play out the rest of the way, and I'm so happy about it because we're a little less than a month now away from the end of the season. I believe the season ends April 18th, and we don't know. We don't know who's going to make it and who isn't. But the Washington Capitals today are above the playoff line, which for them is a victory. So it definitely, I think, will extend Ovechkin's time. And I do think it's part of the reason he's been able to turn around and get the goals going, because the games mean something. This is a team that might be able to go on a run. And so it gives a player that much more motivation, right? But let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Do you think that the Washington Capitals are going to make the playoffs, that they can stay above the line, or do you think one of the other teams is going to catch them, pass them, And we're just going to look at them and say they stayed in the hunt a lot longer than we thought they would have. Let me know your thoughts. Hit like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Thank you guys so much for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.